Welcome to part 2 of leading a successful fall festival. Now before we begin, there's a few things that you need to keep in mind as you set up your games. In part 2, it's exclusively about games and activities that can actually happen at your event. One is, before your event gets there, make sure that you actually play every game. And the reason for that is several things. One is, does this game take costumes into consideration? Is it going to rip a child's costume, damage it, stain it, ruin it in any way? Number 2 is, what are the rules and information that we need to communicate to our volunteers? Number 3 is, are there any safety considerations about this game that we need to make sure to make this game more safe? For example, we used to rent pedal go-karts, and we would have 2 pedal go-karts run a track. And the first time we set up cones in a large circle around the track. Well, as we did the game, we realized very quickly, if a child doesn't know how to steer or loses control, they're going to run over the cones, they're going to be outside the course and into where people are walking. So we had to change our plan to decide, no, we don't need cones around this area. We need to put hay bales around this area for safety's sake. And so take a look at the game. How safe is it? Then the last consideration is, what age does this game target? Is it a preschool game? Is it an older children's game? Does it need 2 levels at the same game? Many of our games will put a cone up close and a cone further away, or some sort of marker. And if it's a younger child, they can play from this area. An older child can play from that area. And that works great for, toss games, throwing games, games of that sort. Now, the games that we're going to go through in activities, they really break into several categories. And I'm going to give you a list of these categories so that your mind can begin thinking along these lines. Now, we're not going to mention every game known to man in here. I believe that we're going to mention probably 75 to 100 games and activities. But the idea is not to say these are the games, but to help you, to inspire your creativity, your imagination, for you to begin to look at what you have access to, or what you want, and to build your fall festival around that. So here are the categories: carnival games, competition games, sports games, races, target games, toss and throw games, craft games, Bible story games, card deck activities, skill games, strength challenges, finding games. Then there's a variety of other activities that don't fall into any one category. And as we go down the games, you'll notice that there are some games that fall into more than one category, or that could fall into more than one. And then last of all, what are some rentable activities? And we will give you some suggestions about that at the very end. Let's start with carnival games. Now, if you want ideas for carnival games, simply go to a carnival, a state fair, look at the games that people are drawn to, look at what people are doing, and ask yourself, is there a way that we can do something like this safely at our own fall festival as well? And so carnival games would include anything from the penny drop, where you take a jar, you have another smaller jar inside, you fill it with water, and the challenge is to drop a penny into the water and get it into the jar in the middle. So the penny drop game, the egg spoon walk, where you give a child or maybe 2 children and make it a race. And you'll notice many games can be done by themselves, and many games can be turned into a race. And so they take an egg, or a wooden egg, or a fake egg is usually best. Otherwise, you're going to make a mess. But maybe you want to do that as a part of your fall festival. And so you take a fake egg, put it on a wooden spoon. They have to carry it down around a marker and back. The bottle knock down. That's a great carnival game, where you stack up bottles, somebody throws a ball, they try to knock all the bottles down. And there's a lot of variations you can do too. What kind of bottles, how big, how heavy, and all of these change the different aspects of the game. You could do musical chairs, where the music plays and you move down, and when the music stops, there's one less chair than there are kids, and so one person's going to be out of the game. You keep working it down till you have, 2 kids in 1 chair, and whoever gets in the chair, that's the person who wins the game of musical chairs. You can do the same thing with other objects. You can have musical hats, where every chair has a hat on it, and instead of sitting in a chair, they have to grab the hat, put it on, then sit in the chair, or sit in the chair, then put the hat on. It just gives a different variation to musical chairs. You can have a cakewalk, and very similar again to musical chairs, where you can have signs or posters on the floor. They step on the signs. Every time the music stops, you remove one, so there's one less sign, and the person at the end, they win a cake or cupcake, something of that sort. You can have the duck game, Simply a little kiddie pool full of water, ducks on it, and whatever duck they choose, whatever's on the bottom, that's what they get. Or you can have it where they choose a certain one. There can be a riddle on the bottom, a joke on the bottom, something of that sort, if you're not actually giving something away at the game. For that, I actually like to have something you give away, but it's nice to have something that's larger than just a piece of candy as well. You can have a fishing game. There's a variety of variations of fishing games. There's the type where the kids have a pole and maybe there's a magnet on the end, and they come and they use the magnet to try to pick up a magnetic fish or a paper fish with a magnet on the ground. They try to pick those up. There's another style where there's a sheet and you have volunteers behind the sheet, and so they lift their fishing pole over the sheet and they can't see, and they finally feel a tug and they pull it up, and then the volunteer behind has connected a prize or something else to the fishing pole. They've caught a fish back there, and so no real fish involved here. I don't like giving away fish. You'll see that at a lot of carnivals, but to me that's just really not a great idea. How many times as a parent has your child won a pet that you really didn't want? So just keep those things in mind. A ball pit is another great one. Fill up a kiddie pool full of balls, or balls cost money. A cheaper route is use balloons, small balloons, even water balloons blown up with air. And the kids go in, there's prizes in the bottom or other things that they're trying to find and discover. And so a ball pit. You can have a clothespin dropping game. So from nose level, they try to drop a clothespin into a wide mouth jar. Skee ball toss, just like what you find at a carnival. You'd have to have somebody build this for you, but it's where you roll the ball and it goes up and then it hits an angle and it jumps into one of the hoops, and depending on which hole it goes in, that's how many points they get. So a variety of carnival activities. Again, you can go to any carnival, take a look at what they're doing, take a look at what's possible, at what's fun, at what people are enjoying, and then copy the same idea to your fall festival. Then you can have competition games. Competition games, a few examples of this would be tug of war. Many times we'll do one-on-one tug of war, simply have a rope, one-on-one, or if there's more than that people there, then they can have 3-on-3 or 2-on-2. Flag tag, where a student has a belt and 2 flags on it. You can play this with handkerchiefs as well, and 2 people go against each other, and the first one to pull both of the other person's flag tags or handkerchiefs wins. A game that we call Samurai. There's 2 styles of Samurai. Samurai simply played with 2 pool noodles. So you have 2 students and make a circle of cones on the ground, or lay out a rope that'll give a circle boundary. So 2 students are inside this circle boundary. Each one has a pool noodle. Tournament style is where, when you say go, the first one to touch the other with the pool noodle wins. And of course, you play 2 out of 3 rounds. And so if they go and they touch, there's one. Okay, let's go again. Then they do it again. And the first one to win 2 out of 3 times. And if they win, like the same person wins twice, go ahead and let them go for a 3rd round as well. So that's tournament style Samurai. Then you've got freestyle Samurai. Freestyle is more for older students. Youth really enjoy this. It's simple. You give them 20 seconds to beat the living daylights out of each other, but you have to give them a few rules. No headshots, intentional headshots. Some accidental ones will happen. You want to make sure to take their glasses off, earrings off, and then with those pool noodles, they can really just beat the living daylights out of each other for about 20 seconds. Make sure that you have a referee there that is good enough to actually say, stop, it's best to step in the middle, then take their samurai away so it doesn't keep going or it doesn't get too wild also. And tic-tac-toe is another. You may not classify it as a competition game, but you have 2 people in a competition. The idea is the competition game can be anything where 2 people go against each other. And so tic-tac-toe can be, they each have a beanbag, and then on the ground you have a tic-tac-toe made. It can be on a board, a poster board. It can be taped off on the ground. Wherever their beanbag lands, or the closest, they put an X or an O, or you put an X or an O in there, and they simply play tic-tac-toe with the beanbags depending on where they land. So a variety of competition games that you can create as well. So think of anything where 2 people go against each other, and you can create your own competition game. Sports games is another one. So take a look at almost any sport, and again, you can create a game from that. So just think of sports. You've got soccer. So set up a goal and have a soccer kick and have a goalie that tries to stop them from scoring. A football toss, and so you're trying to throw a football through a hula hoop or through a tire. You've got a javelin throw. Again, take a pool noodle deal, and have a student throw it towards a hula hoop, and they're trying to throw the javelin through the hula hoop. Think of basketball. You can have a basketball shoot. You can have a baseball throw. You can have putt-putt. You can have bowling. And now you think, well, bowling, how would I do that? Do I need to buy, plastic bowling ball pins and a bowling ball? And the answer is no. Many times you can create a game from what you have. And so, for example, your church may not have a bowling ball set, kid bowling ball set, but you have toilet paper. And so you can take and set up 10 cones, stacked toilet paper, and take a small pumpkin or a ball and simply have your own style bowling toss or bowling alley. And so lots of ways that you can create it. You don't have to buy an actual turf green and have putt-putt. You can set up your own course with a cup and a, golf ball and golf club or even a variety of obstacles using what you have, using a plastic golf ball, a real golf ball, using a ping pong ball, or have a putt-putt, but they have to blow the ping pong ball or fan the ping pong ball to get it to go where they want it to go. So with these games, even sports games, there's a variety of ways. You don't actually have to have the sports equipment. You can have a volleyball net. You can have, with a volleyball net, lots of games you can play. You can use a volleyball, yes. You can use water balloons with sheets or towels, and they toss it over. They try to hit a target. All sorts of games you can play built around the idea of different sports that your kids are familiar with. Then you can have a category of race games. Think of all the races. You can have a foot race, a hopping race, a crab crawl, a bear race, a sack race, a hopper race, and that's where they blow up a hopper and it has kind of a little holder that you hold on, and you sit on the hopper and you jump, you bounce down and around. And hoppers are quite inexpensive. You can buy them. I know you can get very good ones from US Games. I believe it's usgames.com. But you can also find them in other places. A lot of stores have them as well. You can have other races where kids put on things. Maybe they put on swimming flippers, goggles, a snorkel, and then they have to run down and do a certain activity. So they get down there and maybe they have to take a cup of water and splash it in their own face and come back. Of course, you want to keep in mind this is a fall festival. Do you want to get them wet? Maybe they do something else. Or maybe they just go down around a cone and come back, and it's just, they're having to waddle with this equipment on. And so different races you can set up. A three-legged race, a sack race, a pumpkin sweep, where you take a small pumpkin and you give them a broom and they have to sweep the pumpkin along. Or you can do something similar with deflated basketballs, where they kick a deflated basketball down around a cone and come back. Or maybe they put on a swimming inner tube and then they kick the deflated, or go with a combination. They put on the goggles, the snorkel, the flippers, the deflated inner tube, and then with the side of their foot, they have to kick the deflated basketball around the cone and back. So part of it is enhancing the game, making it fun. You can do things to make it more fall-like, using pumpkins instead of balls, using fall-like activities to make it more fall-ish, but you don't have to do that. A lot of people get more caught up in decorations than they do the purpose of the event or even the games of the event. Another category would be target games. Think of all the target games where you actually shoot something at something else. And you could do target games where your kids are throwing darts at balloons, where they're, I know at our church we have a person that owns 2 blow dart guns, and of course with that you want to make sure you have a way to disinfect the mouth guard, and you have to be careful too. Anything you have, like if you have somebody set up and they bring a paintball and they're letting kids shoot a paintball gun at a target, you want to make sure that all the safety things are followed, that gun is never going to point at the direction of another person, that whoever's in charge is in charge of that gun, they know what they're doing, and that they are very well aware of what you expect and safety as well. You can throw grapes or popcorn into somebody's mouth, another target. You can throw things at a moving target. Maybe your moving target is a volunteer. You can maybe have a game where you're throwing Nerf balls or shooting Nerf guns at a target, or maybe you're shooting at the volunteer, the kid that's playing, and it's not that he's trying to hit the target, he's trying not to be hit. So almost like a type of dodgeball, but not using playground ball, something soft that's not going to hurt, but where if you get hit as well, like a Nerf gun or the sponge balls that you can buy during the summertime and that are really made for water. They are great for dodgeball, any kind of game where you're throwing it at kids because they're so soft. You feel it when it hits you, but it's not going to hurt you as well. Horseshoes is another target game. You can have water guns where kids are squirting a water gun at a candle and they're trying to put out the candle. Now, if you do that, you want to make sure you have several candles because when one gets really wet, it may not light very fast. Or you could have them squirting guns. We played the candle squirt at a fall festival or at carnival once, and the candles wouldn't light anymore, and so we simply had a volunteer sit down, and it was, how many times can you hit them in the face from this distance? And so shooting somebody in the face with a water gun, one of your volunteers. Or maybe they're squirting a ping pong ball off of a table, or maybe you have a ping pong ball sitting on top of a 2-liter bottle, and they're trying to squirt it off of the 2-liter bottle. Or maybe instead of a water gun, they're using, again, a Nerf dart gun. They're trying to hit the ping pong ball and knock it off. You could have another target game is a basketball or a basket pitch where you set up a basket and they're trying to toss a ball inside of it. Or sock darts. What a sock dart is, you take a tennis ball, shove it to the end of a sock, and then tie a knot to keep it in, and it becomes almost like a sling. And so set out a few hula hoops. You've got some sock darts. They can either sling it around and throw it, or they can throw it normal, but what they'll find out if they throw it normal, that tail hanging off is going to cause a drag. And so it's not going to go as far as like a tennis ball normally would if it wasn't inside a sock. And so again, a lot of different activities you can do with targets. You can shoot at sitting targets. You can shoot at people. You can shoot at dangling targets. Why not take some empty soda cans, use the tab, tie them from 2 hooks in the ceiling, and see how many of those your kids can shoot with a Nerf gun, or how many that maybe you have them throwing ping pong balls, or throwing Tootsie Rolls, or pieces of gum, and they're trying to see how many dangling cans they can hit, and have some easier and some harder. And so target games, a variety you can do. Be creative. Think of all the things you can throw. Think of all the things you can dodge. Just keep safety in mind, and then create your own games, your own target games. Now, target games are very similar to toss and throw games as well. For example, the basket pitch. You're tossing a ball into a basket, or tossing it into a trash can, or tossing it into a hula hoop. You can cut if you have someone artistic in your church, have them draw a horse, cut out the mouth, have kids throw apples through the horse's mouth. Have them throw candy corn into a cut open pumpkin. A ring toss, they're throwing rings onto stakes that are stuck in the ground, or trying to throw rings onto bottles, or rings onto prizes. Or a dart throw, you've got balloons and they're throwing darts at the balloons. Or a beanbag toss, where you've got, and you can buy these where there's multiple openings, you can make them just as easy. Or you can have something on the ground where they're throwing a beanbag and wherever it lands, they get, or they have to do a certain thing. It lands on a certain thing, they have to jump up and down 5 times and clap their hands. And so a lot of ways you can add variety. Wet sponge throw, and so they take a wet sponge and they throw it. Maybe you have a volunteer lying down in the grass out there, or up in a certain chair, and they're trying to throw the wet sponge at the volunteer. A catapult throw, lots of ways you can make just a homemade catapult where they put something inside, they hit it, and it slings it. You can even put food in a catapult, and a big decoration or paint, all sorts of things they can catapult. Again, though, try these games before you do them. Make sure you have the kinks worked out before your kids get there. You want to make sure it's not going to mess up their costumes or do anything that would be an inconvenience to the parents. You can have a distance throw. Who can throw this ball the furthest? Or a frisbee toss. All sorts of frisbee toss things you can do. Throw it through a hoop, throw it through a target, throw it to a volunteer. Try to do different tricks with a frisbee. Speaking of tricks, this isn't a toss game, but you can do the same with a yo-yo. You can have a yo-yo activity. You can have a ping pong ball toss or throw, or blow, or a goldfish bowl toss. And so you set up a goldfish bowl and they try to toss a ping pong ball inside the goldfish bowl. No real goldfish involved. So those are some ideas of some toss and throw games. You can have craft games. And this could be any craft that your kids come and they do actually at the fall festival. Now you want to make sure that these aren't too hard, aren't too complicated, that they're fun, that it's something the parents would want to take home, but also it won't take too long. And so you can do creative things. You can maybe make paper boat that floats and have some water. They make the boat and they get to float the boat, or make even a paper airplane where a volunteer teaches them how to make a certain kind of paper airplane or two, and they get to make their paper airplane and throw it at a target. Or a paint swirling, where they come and they swirl paints together. Or the sand art that's real popular, different colors of sand, and they put it inside. I know you can buy really small, quick sand art crafts from orientaltrading.com. And so sand art is another one. Or where they make different activities or maybe even masks using paper plates. So just think of all the crafts you do through the year. What do your kids love doing? What would be fun? What would be different? What would be quick, but something that the parents wouldn't mind taking home as well? And another way, if they're going to take a craft home, you could also get some church information or plant some gospel seeds using these activities as well. Maybe you want to pattern your games after Bible stories. So they come to the fall festival, and even though they're unchurched and they're not familiar with the Bible, there's no reason to steer away from games that connect to Bible stories. So maybe at every game, they get a Bible story or a little cutout that explains a Bible story, what that game's about. So maybe they come away from a target game, and they've been throwing a marshmallow at Goliath's head. And so, or using a slingshot to shoot a marshmallow at Goliath's head. And so, then they would get the story of David and Goliath. Or maybe you have a storyteller that briefly tells the story, then kids play the game. You can pattern games after the lion's den. After Jonah, you can have a Jonah box, a big box where kids go inside and, it's dark, and you can have different things in there that might remind them of what you'd find inside a fish. Or pin the beard on King David. And so they're blindfolded and they try to pin the beard on King David. Or a Moses cupcake walk. And you talk about how, Moses led the children, not on a walk, it was a wilderness journey. And you can, have a mummy wrap where you take a student and wrap toilet paper around him and then tell the story or give the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. And so, if you think about all the different Bible stories, in fact, you can do this if you wanted to pattern your whole fall festival after Bible stories. Choose the games. Go through all the games, choose the games, then sit down and look at each game and say, how can this game tie into a Bible story? And so maybe you're throwing something. Well, maybe in a Bible story, there was somebody that didn't live up to a certain goal, or they had a goal. Do you see how you can bridge the gap between those? Or maybe you start with the Bible story. Moses, God used him to part the Red Sea. And in this game, are you parting something? Are you moving something? You think of all the stories that are what you would consider the main stories that you would want unchurched kids to hear. Jesus calming the storm, walking on water. Okay, how can we do this? Maybe instead of walking on water, we're going to have them walk on bubble wrap and not pop the bubbles. And then talk about how Peter, he stepped out, but he took his eyes off of Jesus and he sank. And so you can pattern all of your games after Bible stories if you want to. Just another variation you can put on your fall festival. You can use cards in activities. You can do illusions with cards. You can try to have them throw cards into a bucket. You can, there's a certain way you can throw a card and actually stick it inside a watermelon. Now, I don't know if it sticks inside a pumpkin. You could try that as well. But again, with the games, you want to practice them. You want to play with them beforehand, because once you do it, this is what will happen. Either you'll do a fall festival, we'll see the games during the fall festival, you'll have a bunch of good ideas for next year. Or you'll go ahead and look at each game, play each game, have fun with each game, think through the details, and go ahead and have those same details that you would have had for next year ready for this year. Other game activities are skill games, whole new category. Skill games where they have to do something. Maybe you have a balloon and you have shaving cream. Kids put shaving cream on it and they try to shave the balloon. A tightrope walk where you have a very tight rope and kids try to walk across the tightrope. A haystack find. So something is hidden in hay and you have them dig down, or maybe use packing peanuts, and since many kids are allergic to hay these days, or maybe it's a feather balance, and you buy one of those 2 to 3 foot long peacock feathers, and kids try to balance them on their fingers. How long can they balance a feather? Or a hula hoop. And kids, you have maybe a volunteer doing a hula hoop and challenging, how long can you hula hoop? And of course, if they reach 3 minutes, yay, you're the champion. Because you don't want them doing it all night long, well, I guess unless they want to. I've seen some students sit there and do it at a hula hoop game for 10 minutes. And just it's a challenge. How long can I keep going? And so another fun one, but it's a skill competition, a balance beam, a candy grab where maybe they have to reach in, they have to grab a handful of candy, and how much can they get? Or a piñata dangle, and so they've got a piñata and they're blindfolded trying to hit the piñata. Of course, again, be mindful of safety. Or maybe it's not a piñata, maybe it's a donut dangle, and you have a whole room full of donuts hanging from the ceiling, and maybe they're white powdered donuts, and the kids, they go in and their job is to eat a white powdered donut without getting any of the white powder around their mouth. And so, they're the champion if they can eat the donut and not have any powder left around their mouth. But it's fun because the donuts are dangling different heights, different levels. Maybe it is a bubble wrap walk. We mentioned that a minute ago. Or maybe it's an apple swinging. And so what that would be, it's an alternative to apple bobbing, because you don't want your kids apple bobbing, because when you apple bob, you have apples in a thing of water. And after you had one person's mouth in there, do you really want a bunch of kids opening their mouth under the water? If you think about just the sanitation that goes behind that, it's not very good. So maybe you have apple swinging, where you've got an apple hanging and kids try to actually go and they try to take a bite out of the apple. And of course, for that though, you're going to have a whole lot of apples, and volunteers, maybe they're already dangling, maybe they dangle it from a fishing pole, but kids get 3 tries, no hands to take a bite out of it. Block stacking. Maybe you have thousands of little wooden blocks and they try to stack, and they can just spend time in there building a tower. At our state fair, there's an area where they have literally tens of thousands of, it's probably 6 inches by 2 inches little wood blocks. And my sons will go in there. One year they spent 3 hours in there building, and they built a tower almost as tall as me. It was higher than they could even reach. I mean, they were barely reaching it, and they did all these designs, and it was fun. They had a blast just in there playing with the blocks. Now, you see, if you're going to invest in something like that, don't just use it for a fall festival. Use it for a Wednesday night outreach, a Sunday morning activity. Tie it in. The money that you spend toward a fall festival, games on it, don't let it just be for that one night of the year. Bring those games out at some point during the year. Get your money's worth. Use them again. Use them to make an illustration. Use them in Sunday school. Use it to make a point. Use it during vacation Bible school. On Wednesday night of Bible school, why not have a parents' night? And there's family games, and use some of the same ones that you do from Fall Festival. So get your money's worth if you're going to invest in buying any activities. Another could be a Lego building. But Legos are expensive, so you'd want to see if volunteers. But if you use volunteers' Legos, at the same time, Legos are expensive. You want to make sure they don't get stolen, taken, that there's nothing that's very important that's going to disappear. Jump rope, another skill activity. Maybe it's 2 people swinging a rope, and it's like or maybe it's the double dutch, or maybe it's a single jump rope. There's lots of ways that you can do jump rope skill test. A staring competition. Maybe you have a staring booth and you have a couple of volunteers that need to switch in and out because they're going to get tired, and they stare at kids in the eye, and how long can you stare without blinking? Or the yawn room, and they go in a room with somebody, and the goal is, can they stay in there for 1 minute or 90 seconds without yawning? And this volunteer just starts yawning, and kids are going to be tempted to yawn. And so, there's all sorts of things that you can do just to have fun. Strength challenges is another category. Arm wrestling, leg wrestling, thumb wrestling. You could do like the hammer hit, like what you find where they hit something and it shoots a ball up in the air. Or you can buy rockets where when you stomp the pad, it shoots it up. And so have an area, a launch pad. But it's a strength test because the harder you stomp, the further it'll go. And maybe you don't shoot it in the air. Maybe you have it angled to see the distance. And you go ahead and mark how far did it go. And you mark the furthest one. And so it becomes more of a strength challenge there. games can fall into the category of find it games. And so maybe it's a treasure hunt and they're looking through sand to find something, or they're looking through packing peanuts, or they're looking through balls or balloons or rice, and they're trying to find certain objects, certain treasures. Maybe the find it game isn't finding it physically, maybe it's like a riddle. So you've got riddle challenges that they're trying to solve, or so lots of different find it games you can use as well. You can even give them a scavenger hunt and hide different things throughout the whole fall festival and have them mark down where they found, on a map. And then at the end, they bring it to you and they get a special prize. Other activities you could do balloon animals, face painting, pony rides. Of course, that's something you have to rent or have someone in your church that has a horse or a pony. You can sometimes bring in a petting zoo or have people that will bring in animals. You just want to make sure that it's safe and sanitary. You can do tractor rides. You can do a hay ride. You can do a hay maze. You can do bubblegum blowing competitions. You can do a ballroom, or balloon room. Imagine a room full of balloons. Kids go in it. They try to find different things. So instead of being small, it's large. Marshmallow activities. You can find a bunch of these under our Marshmallows Madness information on our website. But they can make marshmallow sculptures, all sorts of games with marshmallows. You can do a hand shadow room where they go in, they make hand shadows and flashlights. It's a dark room, but now you want to make sure you never have a volunteer and a kid in there in a dark room at the same time. You want to have it open enough, but dark enough where they can make hand shadows, on the wall or on the ceiling. And other ideas with that as well is maybe they go in and there's paper along the wall and they make a design and there's a bright light and volunteers draw their shape on the paper and maybe even send it home with them. So there are a variety of things that you can do with light and shadows. Here's some other activity ideas. Maybe you play the ultimate Simon Says, or a dice roll game where when you roll the dice, whatever activity it lands on, that's what they do. Maybe they have to sing happy birthday or jump up and down 10 times or do 5 jumping jacks. And so it's just a fun competition. You can do community giveaways of community items. So maybe you have places in your community that donate coupons or giveaway baskets. And so you do throughout the night. Maybe you have a drawing and you give random objects away, random things from the community. And it helps promote businesses in your community as well. Maybe you have a stage and you do a family talent show. You can do a family photo booth, but you need to be prepared to print out the picture or email the picture to them in a reasonable amount of time. Maybe you have a costume competition, and so any kids with costumes at a certain time, have them come line up, walk across the stage, or maybe you take pictures of their costumes. You can make an obstacle course also, have kids run through an obstacle course. Just remember, they are wearing costumes. A sucker tree where, there's suckers in the tree, and just whenever a kid wants to, he goes and plucks a sucker off and gets to eat that sucker as he goes through the events. You can create a tunnel of fun, and so this would be like a bunch of cardboard boxes or something that makes a big tunnel, and kids crawl through it, or they go through it, and it's kind of a maze. You can do special features, all sorts of special features, like a superhero storytelling room, and maybe you tell Bible stories. And for at post times, at this time and this time, the superhero is going to be here. Or maybe an area where somebody does illusions and magic tricks. And again, post times, at this time and this time, the illusions will be happening. And announce it from the stage or over the intercom where everybody can hear, hey, right now, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. You can have a MASH unit where kids come and you ask them, oh, where are you hurt? And then wherever they're hurt, that's where you bandage them. I hurt my arm, so you give them a sling. You can create theme ideas. For example, you might have different worlds inside your fall festival. Maybe there's the creation station and exploration point, and maybe over here they become a ninja master, and over here's a critter corner, and over there is sports center, and don't forget to go to the riddle room. And so maybe you want to have it set up like different stations, and in each station there's 4 or 5 different games, and maybe you have people wandering through that tie to the theme. Like if you do a Western theme, you could have a sheriff that goes through and actually puts people in jail jail for fun reasons, Your costume's just too good, I've got to put you in jail, and takes them to jail, and, they have to eat a Tootsie Roll to get out or something like that, a fun requirement. But just to make it fun, to give it almost that kind of Disney sporadic fun, but quality feel at the same time. You can have a pumpkin decorating competition. Where kids come and they decorate their pumpkins. You can ask your local fire department to bring emergency vehicles, have a fire truck there. Now, anytime you have emergency vehicles, police, fire, ambulance, you also want to make sure that you put them where if they need to leave fast, that they can leave fast. So we always put ours right by an entrance where if they need to leave, they can. And let them know if they want to give away coloring pages, that's great. And sometimes they'll want to do that because it's a great way for them to connect with kids in the community as well. You can have a drawing or a coloring competition. You can have a salon where maybe kids come up and you have to get parents' permission for younger kids, but you take that like this new chalk that you rub through girls' hairs and it gives them different purple streaks, or where you braid their hair, all sorts of things. But you want to be careful with this. Anytime you're dealing with hair, you want to make sure that you're very careful that you don't do something that's going to make mom and dad not happy. Another area, you might have a gospel tattoo. Now, it's debatable. Some people like these, some people don't. And it's just a matter of opinion, what you like, what your church is going to be okay with. But giving gospel tattoos, something where kids walk away and they've got John 3:16 right there on their arm, or God loves you. And it becomes a reminder of some spiritual points. You can have an area where you maybe have kits that you buy, the Identify a Kid kit, where they do their fingerprints and then parents can take it home, fill out their information. Maybe you even take a picture, put the picture on there, and what it becomes in case of an emergency or a crisis, they have their kid's picture, fingerprints, information there ready to help. So it's an Identikid kit, and you can buy these usually fairly inexpensively. You can check online for them. And then, of course, besides all these activities and games, there's rentable things. You can rent all sorts of inflatables. You can rent cotton candy, popcorn machines. You can typically rent somebody's time to come in and make caricature drawings. Slime machine, dunk tank. Now, if you do a dunk tank, be careful because depending on where you are, it might be too cold for somebody to get dunked or slimed because very quickly on a cold October evening, right before it gets to be wintertime, it can be very cold. The closest I ever came to hypothermia was in a dunk tank at a fall festival. I got out, couldn't feel my feet, and shook for about 6 hours afterwards. And so you want to be careful, be wise, and the best way to find out what's rentable in your area is find a local company that churches use that has a good reputation, and find out what events or inflatables they have, what cost they are, compare it to your budget, see what you can do. It's not necessary to rent anything, but it is nice to have that one big thing that from a distance people look and go, oh wow, let's stop there. And so at this point, let me just reiterate again that our goal was not to give you a list of 5 million games, but really to give you lists that gave you a taste of a bunch of different categories. And I'm going to walk through these categories again, and now that you've heard some different variations, just kind of think of what you want your fall festival to be like, what kind of games you want to have, whether you want it set up with stations, are you basing it on Bible stories, are you just doing games, what's your point, what fits best with your purpose. And so here are the categories again: carnival games, competition games, games that are built around sports, races, target games, toss and throw games, craft games, games that represent Bible stories, games that use decks of cards or cards in it, skill games, strength challenges, finding games, where kids are hunting for something, and then the variety of other activities, which could include things from the stage, activities where parents are in competition, a pie-eating competition, bubble-blowing competition, who can eat a cracker the fastest and whistle afterwards, all sorts of games like that you can do that's more set in front of people, so as they're coming and going, they can stop and watch. And, of course, in the middle of all this, remember your purpose. Don't lose in the middle of the fun and the games and activities. The purpose you're doing what you're doing. Your purpose is to communicate the gospel. Your purpose is to let people see the life and love of Jesus in you and in your volunteers. Have fun at your fall festival.